All right. We are good to go. Today, we'll finish up the historical methods book. I know it's not real exciting. And the irony is, we'll learn today why it's not exciting and why they're not going to make a movie out of it. And we'll finish off all of that. And then on Thursday, I have a review, a study guide for the test. Our first test will be this, as soon as class ends, Thursday. So be from 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon, September 2nd, through the whole next Monday. So you have the whole weekend, the whole holiday, take an hour, get it out of the way. And if anything comes up, email me, let me know. Now, we're on the same schedule. I have another section of the class. We're on the same schedule, which is a good thing. The interesting thing with the in-person class, out of 48 people in Derthick Hall, 8 already, that's 20%, have been exposed or have had or are having symptoms. So it's real and it's out there. So be careful. We're better off doing this the way we're doing. Anyway, one of the reasons why the textbook is boring is because it doesn't have much of a plot. History has a plot. We try to make it interesting. Otherwise, people don't see it. People don't want to hear your history, whether it's a personal history or social science, political history. So what's the difference between a story and just the facts? Nathan Bedford Forrest, again, just the facts. He was a Confederate general, founder of the Klan, and there's a statue in the state capitol. Those are the facts. You can make a story any number of ways. You know, right now, I'm reading a history book on Afghanistan, and it tells a lot of personal stories about one American in the 1830s who worked for one of the local Maharajas, became a general, and was given a kingdom in the Himalayas for his service. And so that's kind of cool. Those kind of stories make you want to read the history. If you want to go back through earlier notes in this class, telling the story of an American adventurer is the Romantic school rather than the Nationalist school or anything else. See, that's an approach to history. So that's the kind of thing I might ask on the test. Hint, hint, hint. Anyway, so we're always doing narratives. If I just give you a list of facts that, 8 people in my other class have been exposed to COVID, that's 20%. And they're all sophomores, you might want to put 2 and 2 together and thinking, maybe they live together. We naturally make connections and make stories out of facts, whether we want to or not. Psychologists have shown us that. So anyway, here's strengths and weaknesses on narrative.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Okay.
What is the difference between Goldilocks and the Three Bears and a newspaper article on bear attack statistics? Both are about human interaction with bears, but the difference is the first is a made-up story about girl meeting some bears, while the second is reporting on facts about bears. A story has many obvious differences from a statistical report. Goldilocks is an example of narrative writing, which is any kind of writing that tells a story. Usually, narrative writing is categorized as fiction, which is based on imaginative events or stories that did not actually happen. The other category of writing is known as nonfiction, which would be writing that is based on real facts. This usually consists of newspapers, essays, reports, and other informative writing. However, some nonfiction can in fact tell a story, which would classify it as narrative writing. In the case of nonfiction, the story must be a true story with real people and events. Autobiographies and biographies are examples of nonfiction that is narrative writing, as they tell the real story of a person's life. There are many specific
See, that's history. It's people's stories, country stories. Again, it's a story. It's just not a list of facts.
traits every piece of narrative writing should have. All stories must have characters, also known as the people or subjects of the story. Usually, there are also specific types of characters needed in order to create a developed story. For example, each story will often have a protagonist, which is the hero or heroine. This is a central character of the story. Often there is also an antagonist.
See, we naturally do that. If you are a conservative, you often think you're the good person and the liberal is the bad guy, and vice versa. We naturally do that. And we are attracted to stories like that. So, when we write a history, to make it interesting, you make it personal. This is why a lot of people are interested in celebrities and movie stars. Again, we naturally do that, whether we like to or not.
Which is a character who opposes the protagonist. Overall, each story needs characters to push forward or react to the events in the plot. In addition to characters, every story must have a plot or events that occur. Think of your favorite book. What if none of the events in that book happened? Take away the plot and the characters would just be sitting around doing nothing.
And when I do a video class or narrative storytelling class, I tell people to look for things that make the story. Go back a little bit. Yeah. Find a climax, a turning point. Look for that if you're, again, making a commercial, if you're making a movie. Those are the kind of things to look for. Now, when you're trying to tell a truthful story and you're picking something out to be the climax, you're making a subjective decision, but you're also telling a story. If you don't have a story, it's kind of, no one's going to be interested. So yes, storytelling is inherently subjective.
Think of your favorite book. Would it still be your favorite book? Of
No.
course not. It would be the most boring read ever. Every story needs a plot or events that give the character something to react to. Usually the plot consists of 5 components: the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. One of the most important components of a story is the conflict. A conflict is any struggle between opposing forces.
Yep. I started out as a theater major. And what's the soul of any play or story? Conflict. Difference between people, conflict within yourself. These are the things that, they say, oh, why do you always tell bad news? Well, because no one's interested in something that's just nice. These kind of things are the things that, again, attract an audience, that make it compelling to communicate a historical story.
Imagine a story where there were no problems. The characters simply live their happy lives with no troubles and nothing difficult to deal with. Would that story interest you? Probably not. Conflict is very important to creating interest in stories. Usually the main conflict is between the protagonist and the antagonist, but that is not always the case. The struggles can exist between society, within a character, or even with acts of nature. There are 2 basic types of conflict: internal and external. Internal conflicts are the struggles that occur within a character, and external conflicts are the struggles outside of a character. These can occur between two characters, between characters and society, or between characters and natural events. The setting is another component of narrative writing. The setting is the time and location in which the story takes place. These facts set the scene for the story and can determine what kind of
There you go. We talked about the who, what, where, when, and why. The where, again, Civil War in Chattanooga. Some person in their essay said, hey, and slavery was considered a fairly normal thing at the time. And this person really, I won't say defended it, but was saying, hey, it wasn't, you have to put it in that context. Well, if you read the history, a lot of people didn't think it was normal. So anyway, that conflict existed in the 1860s. Now, we now know slavery is bad. I've said before, when I was a kid, you had a lot of Civil War imagery, a lot of Confederate imagery was mainstream. I talk about the Dukes of Hazzard with the car, the General Lee with the Confederate flag on it. Can't do that today. Also, when I was a kid, we didn't have any gay characters. Things have changed. Society changes, the way we look at things change, and you have to put the when and where in context.
conflict occurs. For example, if a story is set in the 1800s, can the protagonist have a conflict that involves losing his cell phone? Unless the story is about time travel, the answer is no. The setting can also be important to plot twists if the reader makes assumptions about the time or place that turn out to be false.
Very much so in
Overall, the
history.
setting has an important impact on every story. One last component of narrative writing is point of view. Point of view is the perspective in which the story is told. The two main points of view are first person and third person. If a story is told in first person point of view, the narrator or person who is telling the story is a character in the story. In this case, the narrator is telling his personal thoughts and opinions within the story, using the personal pronouns me, my, and I. In third person point of view, the narrator is outside of the story. In this case, the narrator tells the story.
Obviously, in history, most of it is third person, but your primary sources, diaries and descriptions, are often first person. So you see both. Anyway, my point is, when you're trying to tell the story of what happened during the Civil War, or what happened in Afghanistan, or what's happening with COVID, we naturally pick and choose and order our information to make a narrative in order to make it compelling and to communicate with others. And if you don't, people are going to put the facts together anyway and make their own stories. And that's just something we have to deal with. And indeed, does that make history subjective? You bet. Anyway, back to that. Yep. And again, keep it, if you're writing that, keep it consistent. Anyway, then your book jumps from when you're collecting material, you often find copyright issues. What happens in copyright is oftentimes the things that you're trying to find, archives, diaries, is copyrighted material. And again, the book talks about that. Basics of copyright. Copyright material, anything owned by somebody else, songs, books, movies, that is made original and professional, is naturally copyrighted. Stuff that is not copyrighted is public domain. You can use it for whatever. Copyright is automatic for all original and professional material. You don't need that Circle C sign to have the copyright. It's just that if I write a song or take an original picture, it is mine. And I need to give permission for somebody to use it. Facts are public domain. Words, sentences, and what you do with the facts is copywriting. If my uncle-in-law, Mickey Roper, well, here's the facts. Mickey died of COVID 1 year ago, 78 years old. That's the facts. Now, if I tell the story of Mickey Roper and his family and went into more detail, my words would be copyrighted. You can't copy my sentences and sentence structure without my permission. One thing that the exception is stuff in class. I can show you books and movies, and you can show me books and movies and songs, and you're not breaking copyright because you're not making money, you're sharing it and using it for educational purposes. Here's a little video on copyright. Okay, here we go.
Here's an idea. You're not allowed to sing happy birthday.
That's true. You ever notice you very seldom hear happy birthday at restaurants, or if you seldom see it on TV or in movies? Here's why.
Happy Birthday is the Guinness Book of World Records holder for the most performed song ever. You've probably heard it more than all of those Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Rihanna, and One Direction songs combined. Unless you work in the food court at the mall, in which case I am very sorry. But for all the times your family and friends have sung an off-key happy birthday to you, or you've sung it to a friend in a crowded restaurant and they've turned bright red, there's probably a lot you don't know, like who wrote Happy Birthday and when. It was Patty and Mildred Hill in 1893. And that you're actually not allowed to perform it in public without licensing it, because despite being 119 years old, it's still protected by copyright. Wait.
Yes, if you use Happy Birthday professionally, you have to get permission from Warner Media.
What? I know it's weird, but it kind of makes sense. Sort of. Let's talk about copyright for a second before we decide whether or not Happy Birthday should still be copywritten or copyrighted. Copywrote. Copyright is complex, but the aims are noble. One aim is to incentivize creators for making awesome junk and to protect their awesome junk from people who want to copy.
Yes, you notice they use Metallica. Metallica sued Napster, the file sharing service, I guess about 15 years ago. And they said, hey, if you're giving away free music, y'all should be buying the album, you're stealing from us. Metallica won the lawsuit. Napster went out of business, went to Germany, and Apple and iTunes agreed to charge, what, 99 cents a song. That's the deal they worked out. But it is the band Metallica who really started the whole file sharing system as we know it today.
Copy their awesome junk, but don't have the right. That's where the name copyright comes from, actually. In order to copy something, you need to have that right, that copyright. Another aim is to provide a system by which those works end up available to the public, thus increasing the pool of freely available culture. Once a copyright expires, that once protected—
Yeah, if you people who put sampling out there, they're not protecting their copyright. They say, go right ahead and do it, but that's up to the artist.
protected work is then in the public domain. Once a work like James Joyce's Ulysses or George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead is—
Yes, George Romero put Night of the Living Dead in the public domain on purpose, which gives us The Walking Dead. That's why we have all these zombies, because one of the originators of the zombie movies said, go ahead.
in the public domain, it's available to everybody. And not just Birdie and the Club, but like Birdie. To remix, remake, alter, perform, go nuts. You could make a novelization of Night of the Living Ulysses, Space Rock Opera Ballet on Ice, the movie, and charge $45 for it. Or you could make awesome comics out of classic lit. Link in the description. But once a work is in the public domain, it means the original creator doesn't profit as easily or in the same way from their creation anymore, which some people, some of whom have a lot of money and very much like their money, think isn't cool at all. Even a little. Not cool. Like imagine if Barbie, Mickey, and Luke Skywalker were in the public domain. There go the revenue models of some majorly successful people and businesses. Not to mention someone would probably make some kind of like terrible Disney-fied Star Wars crossover. Huh?
Guess what? Who owns Star Wars? This guy. So they can do stuff like that. And they also own Marvel. So you might see all sorts of crossover.
They did what? You have got to be kidding me. That is the stupidest.
By the way, PBS, who did this tape, got permission or paid Matt Groening of The Simpsons for this graphic. Or they got permission or they paid, they're doing that with permission. So every time you use something original, like a Simpsons thing, you have to ask permission.
Thank God Mickey Mouse will become public domain.
Continually protect these.
Was that?
I said, thank God Mickey Mouse will become public domain in a few years.
Oh, God. Well, I don't know. The Disney Corporation still owns it, even if Disney himself is dead.
Creative works. In the US, at least, we've been extending copyright terms, thus keeping these things out of the public domain. Historically, we focused more on their ownership and profitability than on adding to the pool of freely available culture. Originally only 14 years, copyright terms grew to 28, 56, and 75 years. Then life of the author plus 50 years, 70 years, 95 years, and in some cases, life of the author plus 120 years. For some perspective, if this had always been the case, you could have been around for the annexation of the state of Texas, and the copyright on your banjo ditty would just about be expiring. Like Violet and the Chocolate Factory.
But this is why you hear a lot of classical music on videos and whatnot. Beethoven has been dead for 194 years. So you can use his music. A lot of folks, what I do when I make a video, I do a search. I do a Google search and say free music. If they're giving away the music free, you're not stealing from them and you're not infringing copyright.
Actually, copyright terms keep growing and growing and growing. Now, Happy Birthday isn't nearly as profitable as Mickey, but it is a beneficiary or victim, depending upon how you look at it, of the same system. Patty and Mildred Hill put some blood, sweat, and tears into Good Morning to All, the song which gives Happy Birthday its melody. They sold it to a publisher in 1893, who sold his business to another publisher, whose brother took over and then bought other publishers. At some point in here, Good Morning to All was given Happy Birthday's lyrics, and thanks to innumerable and mercurial cultural forces, it became the song we know and love. Happy birthday. Not long after that, in the late 20th century, Happy Birthdays, now much larger than it was in 1893, publisher sold for millions of dollars to the Warner Music Group, who still holds the copyright for Happy Birthday until 2030. That's right, the people who own the works for Dio, the Deftones, and Dragon Force own Happy Birthday, until the year Ghost in the Shell standalone complex takes place. Happy Birthday rakes in $2 million a year for Warner, who at one point sought royalties for all public performance, including that by
Yep. Oh, and here is
wait staff at restaurants like Red Lobster.
Red Lobster makes a big deal about Happy Birthday because they pay Warner Music to use it. Now, you don't hear that at other restaurants. What's it? Outback got in trouble and they got sued for performing Happy Birthday without permission.
Which feels just icky. Holding a 100-year-old piece of much beloved and shared culture hostage for something like 0.1% of your annual revenue? HBD has certainly come a long way.
That's Glover, that's Childish Gambino, the
Since
musician.
that kindergarten classroom in the 1890s. The history and legality of this whole thing is complicated and really interesting, but Happy Birthday seems to indicate that maybe we've tilted towards one of copyright's two original aims. If you want to know more, there's a really great paper by Robert Brown Eyes about Happy Birthday and copyright, link in the description. But the essential argument is this. At the point that ASCAP was shaking down Outback Steakhouse for protection money like some sort of chain restaurant mafia, were Mildred or Patty or anyone even related to them benefiting at all? And furthermore, is the fact that Happy Birthday
See, and he got permission to use it. Whoever recorded this, Jack Black, paid Warner thousands of dollars to do that.
is still protected, stifling culture in some way. If the purpose of copyright is to incentivize creators while at the same time ensuring that at some point all culture is available, is it militaristic in one way and all loosey-goosey in another way, or is it all gravy? I mean, nothing should be more aggressively protected than the creative work that comes from your soul, right? Not to mention when someone makes bank at a hedge fund, they don't have to spend.
So you get the point. Anything that's original and professional is copyrighted. And a lot of people protect their copyrights and you have to ask permission. A lot of people don't. This is why you go to the library and ask. You have to be very careful. Now, when you're making videos and whatnot, you're sampling and you're cutting and pasting. Guess what? There is no copyright police out there. You're probably going to get away with it. But once in a blue moon, someone says, you can't. If I see something that I write or take a picture of and somebody use it, I'll say, excuse me, y'all better pay me. But it's up to the person who creates the stuff to protect their own copyright. But still, the matter of principle, you shouldn't. All right, you use that. Okay, we got somebody in chat. Yeah, have to be slaves. Yeah, well. Yep, see? There you go. This happens all the time. You don't think that's going to happen? There, it happened to you. Most of the time, you'll get away with it, but once in a blue moon, yep, they'll do that. You just never know. Anyway, and this is why we like to go through libraries and journals to get our material, because you know you're not going to deal with that kind of crap. So this is why the best in history, we use peer-reviewed journals and research. And it's good for you to get involved and do it right too, because some of you might want to go to grad school. Guess what? If you go to grad school, you're going to have to do research, term papers. I still got to do term papers. I hate it, but it still comes with the turf. So knowing how to do this is good for grad school. Getting good information is good in any job. Employers tell me you need that. Looks impressive on the resume, gets good information, and you get some feedback. Speaking of which, you write your paper, you submit it, and they come back, sounds good. Usually they tell you to fix something and revise or say, sorry, not working. But that's how peer review works. You have experts review your stuff to get rid of the bad stuff. Anyway, that's where your book finishes up. I know that's kind of all over the place, but that's what we're going to test on. Copyright is immortality. Anyway,
I meant I long for immortalities. So that I can still be alive when the copyrighted works become public domain.
good luck. I hope so. Hope medicine advances that long. You'd be probably 140 for that to happen. But anyway, I just wanted to give you an overview of what you have to deal with when doing some of this research stuff. That's really the point. Anyway, that's the whole book. We will review all the stuff for the test next time. And hey, no Zoom bombs, no sign-offs. Stuff is working. So we'll review for the test next time. That's all we'll do. Take about a half hour. And then you're on your own and you can have a good holiday. Anyway, any other questions about what's going on here? Stay dry, stay healthy, and I will talk to you then next Thursday. Have a good couple of days.